Why do hormones matter for women with ADHD? My name is Dr. Ruth Dutton. I'm a board-certified adult psychiatrist, and we know that women experience an exacerbation of their ADHD symptoms during certain hormonal fluctuations, either during their life or even within a menstrual cycle. So the hormone estrogen is neuroprotective, meaning that when estrogen is on board in the right amounts, because there is such a thing as too much as well, then your brain is functioning at a much higher capacity than when estrogen levels are very low and maybe other hormones are predominant, like progesterone. So there are certain periods of a woman's life in which either estrogen is going low, or there may just be a whole lot of different hormonal fluctuations, and so the brain is going to get the brunt of that. And during these times, ADHD symptoms tend to get much worse. And we see that there's also an increase in diagnosis of ADHD during these times, because at other times in their life or their cycle, when women were able to compensate for their ADHD symptoms, when estrogen is low, they lose the ability to do that. So the first time is going to be during puberty. So when girls are entering into that 11, 12, 13, early teen years, at that time we notice an increase in their ADHD symptoms. And that's why we see a lot of girls getting diagnosed, in the middle school years, like 11, 12, 13. And the second time is going to be during those perimenopausal years. So this is going to be starting anywhere from like mid 30s to mid 40s for most women. And this consists of the period of time between when your hormones start to change in anticipation of no longer being in those childbearing years, up until 1 year after your last menstrual cycle. And so once you're 1 year after that menstrual cycle, then you're postmenopausal and the body kind of starts to re-equilibrate. But during that perimenopausal state, there are so many hormonal fluctuations going on. And in general, the estrogen is getting lower and lower. So a lot of women experience a worsening of ADHD symptoms during this period. And there's a number of women who've been able to get through life undiagnosed until they hit those 40s, 50s, and then you know what hits the fan. And what about menstruating women? So during a menstrual cycle, there's the follicular phase, which is the first 2 weeks of a cycle, assuming a 28-day cycle. Then you're going to ovulate around mid-cycle, around day 14. And then you're going to have your luteal phase for those last 2 weeks. So during that first 2 weeks, the follicular phase, estrogen is high, women are doing great, they're functioning well. And then at ovulation, there's another spike of multiple hormones. And so that is not what causes the dysregulation, but sometimes right after ovulation, when there's a precipitous drop in hormones, that can trigger worsening ADHD symptoms. And then for those 2 weeks of the luteal phase, basically progesterone is getting greater and greater, while estrogen is getting lower and lower. And then as we get closer to day 1 of the period, so especially that last 7 days of the cycle, that's when ADHD symptoms can be significantly worse. So what do we do about this? One, we recognize that women who seem to have new onset ADHD symptoms, either during puberty or during menopause, have probably had these symptoms their whole life. They're just now unable to compensate for them. And then 2, for women who have ADHD symptoms and are menstruating, then you may think about things like increasing the dose of their medication during that late luteal phase, or making other lifestyle adjustments, like making sure that you're prioritizing sleep, you're eating really well, you're not ingesting toxins like drugs and alcohol, and you're getting exercise for that endorphin boost, but not too much that you're putting stress on your body. What about you? Have you noticed fluctuations in your ADHD symptoms that seem to correlate with hormonal changes that you've experienced? I'd love to hear about it, so please share in the comments below. Wishing you all good mental health today, and I'll see you in the next one.